The serpent beneath the thorn tree. In a small village nestled between golden plains and whispering forest lived Obika, a gentle soul with hands that healed and a heart that listened. He wasn't wealthy. His hut was made of dried grass and mud, his clothes stitched from leftover fabric, and his sandals had seen more journeys than a traveling drummer. But to the villagers, Obika was a treasure. He was both a farmer and a herbalist, tending his crops by day and collecting medicinal plants by dusk. If your child had a fever, Obika had a tea for that. If your goat stopped eating, he had a root to stir its appetite. Even the bees didn't sting him, probably because they liked his vibe. One crisp morning, as the dew still clung to the tall blades of elephant grass, Obika set off into the forest with a woven basket slung over his back. He was humming a tune his grandmother used to sing, something about yams and dancing under moonlight, when he noticed an unusual rustling up ahead. The rustling wasn't sharp like a monkey or soft like a mongoose. It was heavy, slow, like something powerful was struggling. Curiosity, which had gotten Obika into trouble before, like the time he accidentally fell asleep inside a beehive cave, don't ask, pulled him forward. He pushed through a curtain of leaves and stopped. There, in the middle of a small clearing, lay a giant serpent, thick as a tree trunk, scales dark green with golden flecks that shimmered like the sun of river water. The serpent was pinned under a massive thorny branch, its body coiled and tensed, eyes wide with pain. Obika gasped. This creature was not ordinary. He took a cautious step closer when suddenly. "Be careful, Hila." The voice came from above. A grey forest hornbill, perched high on a twisted acacia tree, looked down at him with piercing eyes. "That one is no mere animal. She is Nyoka, daughter of the old magic. Her tongue speaks thanks, but her heart may still hunger." Obika blinked. "You talk?" "I'm a forest bird. We've been talking since before humans learned to listen," the hornbill replied, puffing its feathers. "Now leave her. Let nature decide." But Obika shook his head slowly. Pain is pain, no matter who wears it. He approached the serpent with steady steps. "Easy now," he murmured, more to himself than to the creature. He studied the thorny branch, thick and wicked, heavy enough to pin the serpent but not impossible to move. He placed his basket down and grabbed a nearby stick, using it to wedge under the branch. With a grunt, he pushed. The branch gave way with a loud crack, tumbling to the side. The serpent's body uncoiled in a slow, elegant motion. She lifted her head high, her golden eyes locking with his. "You have freed me," she hissed softly. Her voice was like wind sliding across a drum, smooth, rhythmic, but with something ancient beneath it. "I am Nyoka, once guardian of these woods, now forgotten and cursed by time." Obika gave a cautious nod. "And I am Obika. I mend what's broken." Nyoka slithered forward, her body moving with an unnatural grace. "Your kindness, it is rare," she said. "But tell me, Hila, do you know what becomes of those who trust too easily?" Before Obika could answer, she offered a strange smile, or something close to it. "Still, I thank you." But Obika noticed it then, a flicker in her eyes. Not gratitude. Not peace. Something else. A shadow. A hint of old anger, perhaps, or hunger yet unsatisfied. Before he could dwell on it, Nyoka turned and began to vanish into the brush, scales whispering over the grass like silk on stone. The hornbill flapped down beside Obika, eyeing the retreating serpent. "You may have just invited fire into your house, farmer." Obika only shrugged. "If so, I try not to get burned." The forest held its breath as Nyoka disappeared among the trees, and Obika turned back toward the village, basket half full, mind fully racing. And somewhere in the shadows, the serpent's eyes glowed gold in the fading light. Fangs of betrayal. Obika didn't speak of the serpent for days. The villagers noticed, of course. It's hard not to when your favorite herbalist comes back from the forest with a nervous twitch and stares into his tea like it's whispering secrets. But eventually, the truth slithered into the village. Her name was Naoka. She arrived in silence. One morning, as the misty clung to the earth, she coiled herself at the edge of Obika's compound, her head lowered, her scales dawed with dust. "I am weak," she whispered. Obika, though wary, remembered the forest. The thorn tree. The pain in her eyes. He told the villagers that she was recovering. "Let her rest," he said. "A heart can heal if given warmth." Now, here's where things got complicated. Naoka, despite being a giant magical serpent, was charming. Really? She didn't hiss or rattle or threaten. Instead, she spoke. Oh, how she spoke. At night, she would call by the fireside with the elders and children alike, telling ancient stories of the world before fire, of birds who shaped mountains, of rivers that sang lullabies. Her voice wrapped around their ears like silk, smooth, calming, impossible to ignore. The children adored her. They fed her mango slices on long sticks. The elders nodded thoughtfully at her wisdom. Even goats, usually suspicious of large slithery things, grew oddly tolerant. But while the village bathed in her tales, Naoka watched. She saw the joy in their simple routines. The laughter of children, the rhythm of planting season, the shared meals and sunlit dances. And slowly, something dark began to coil inside her. She remembered the time when she was worshipped. When kings built shrines in her name. When villages offered livestock, gold, prayers. And now, she was eating mangoes off sticks like a parrot in a petting zoo. She began to think, Obika didn't rescue me. He humbled me. He made me small. Obika, of course, was none the wiser. He went about his days tending to the sick, teaching children which leaves cured coughs and which ones caused hiccups for 3 straight days. He used the latter for mischief sometimes. One night, as a cool breeze rustled the banana leaves and the stars stitched silver across the sky, Obika sat in his hut grinding herbs. He was humming that same yam song again. Behind him, the shadows moved. "Obika," came a soft whisper. He turned. Naoka slithered in, slower than usual. "You have been good to me," she said, her voice lower now. "Too good. I wonder, does your kindness come from strength, or from fear?" Obika raised an eyebrow, still seated. "Fear," he asked with a soft chuckle. "My dear, I've stared into the eyes of a lion with a nosebleed. I don't fear much." Naoka's tongue flicked. "And yet, you trust a serpent in your home." Suddenly, she lunged. Faster than wind, her body snapped forward, jaws wide, fangs glinting in the firelight. Obika roared, knocking over a basket of dried roots. He grabbed a burning stick from the fire and swung it wildly. Naoka recoiled with a hiss, her scales smoking from a near miss. Her eyes, those beautiful golden eyes, were now full of fury and shame. "You trusted me," she snarled. "And that was your mistake." Obika, panting, looked into her face, not with hate, but with deep sadness. "No," he said. "Trusting you was my hope." He reached for a calabash filled with powdered bark, sleeping dust from the dreaming trees. With one swift motion, he tossed it into the air. It burst in a soft cloud. Naoka coughed, then trembled. Her body stiffened, eyes fluttering. With effort, Obika used a thick rope soaked in root oil to bind her, just as he had learned from the hunters who once trapped giant pythons by the river. She didn't fight much. Not anymore. He stood over her, chest rising and falling like a drumbeat. "Why?" he whispered. Naoka, weakened, stared at him with eyes no longer shining. "Because your peace reminded me of everything I lost." Obika didn't answer. The hut was silent, save for the distant hoot of an owl. He lit another stick, not to protect himself this time, but to guide his thoughts. Wisdom of the Baobab Council. When dawn arrived, it brought with it an uneasy silence. Word had already traveled faster than a hungry goat at harvest. The serpent had turned. The healer had survived. And now, judgment was required. In the heart of the village stood the Baobab Council, a circle of ancient minds, each elder seated beneath the roots of a great baobab tree that had seen more sunrises than most stars. These were not rulers. They were rememberers, keepers of stories, morals, and the delicate balance between forgiveness and consequences. Obika approached the sacred circle slowly, leading Nayoka, bound in enchanted vine rope, her form dimmed, her spirit quiet. A few villagers followed at a distance, whispering and pointing. Some looked afraid. Others curious. A few looked betrayed. The eldest of the council, Mzi Bomoni, tapped his staff once, and the whisper stilled like a pond after a storm. Obika, Bomoni said, his voice thick like roasted honey, you bring before us danger wrapped in sorrow. Speak. Obika stepped forward, but did not bow, respect among equals. I found her trapped, he began, and freed her. I saw pain and chose mercy. She repaid it with venom. Nayoka lifted her head slightly. I am not proud of what I did, she said. But I will not lie about what I am. Mzi Eo, the sternest of the elders, narrowed her eyes. And what are you? Nayoka's voice was low, almost a whisper. A creature once loved, then feared. Once sacred, then haunted. I am made of old magic, and older wounds. Mzi Kofi, the youngest of the council, a sprightly 78 years old, leaned forward. You claim you beat the hand that fed you because you were once slapped by another. There were murmurs. Nayoka's eyes met his. No, she said. I beat the hand that reminded me I was once fed, only to be abandoned. That is not an excuse. It is a truth. Obika listened quietly. The Nayoka before him now was different. Not just quieter, but clearer. Mzi Eo turned to Obika. Would you trust her again? Obika shook his head slowly. No. But I do not hate her. I fear what she might become, if judged only by what she was. The council grew silent. Mzi Bomoni stood, an event so rare a leaf actually fell in shock. Tell me, serpent, he said. Can a being truly change its nature? Can a hawk decide not to hunt? Can a river flow backward without breaking the land? Nayoka did not flinch. Perhaps not. But a hawk can choose when not to strike. And a river, if guided, can bring life instead of flood. Maybe I cannot change what I am, but I can choose what I do. There it was, a breath of something fragile. Hope. The council fell into long debate. Long enough for two chickens to sneak into the circle and be escorted out by a mildly annoyed goat. Mzi Eo argued for exile. She is dangerous. Instinct does not ask permission, it strikes. Mzi Kofi, however, believed in trial. Let her prove her change. Fear is not a crime. But acting in fear can be forgiven if corrected. Mzi Bomoni, the tiebreaker, finally raised his staff once more. Then let it be said. The serpent will not be punished by chains, but by choice. Gasps. A few confused head tilts. Nayoka, he said, you will be exiled, not as punishment, but as reflection. Go to the Whispering Mountains, where the winds speak with the voice of time. Live their season. Think. Heal. If, when the sun returns to its highest, you come back with a new heart, then we will know. Nayoka bowed her head. Obika stepped forward, eyes soft. And if she comes back unchanged? Bomoni's gaze grew heavy. Then we shall see the difference between a serpent and a monster. The vines were loosened. Nayoka slithered away slowly, not with anger this time, but with something rare. Regret. The fire of redemption. The Whispering Mountains were not known for being hospitable. They were named not for their charm, but for the strange howls that echoed through their peaks, wind slipping through ancient caves, old spirits muttering secrets, and the occasional insult from a very rude parrot who had taken up residence near the summit. This was where Naoka would spend her exile, a full season, with nothing but rock, wind, and her own thoughts for company. She slithered away from the village slowly that day, the sun just peeking over the horizon. The villagers watched her go in silence. No cheers. No farewells. Just weary eyes and tightened lips. Except for one. Obika. He walked beside her until the last tree of the lowlands gave way to stone. You don't owe me anything, he said softly, but if you come back changed. Naoka didn't look at him. I don't know how to be anything else. You don't have to be anything else, he said, placing a hand on her head. Just be something more. Then he turned and left. Naoka watched him go. Something twisted inside her chest. Not hunger. Not pride. Loneliness. The mountains were harsh. Food was scarce, warmth even scarcer. The wind never stopped whispering, and sometimes, it shouted, memories Naoka had buried clawed their way back with every gust. She remembered the temple of her birth, warm pools, soft light, humans kneeling in awe. She had been revered once. Adored. Until one day, a young priest came with a new idea, no more worship of beasts. They tore down the temple. Chased her from the sanctuary. Called her cursed, evil, unnatural. She slithered through jungles, swamps, even cities. Always feared. Always haunted. Her trust in humans shriveled like fruit left in the sun. And so, she became what they called her, dangerous. But now, here she was. Alone. And oddly, no one was haunting her. She started talking to herself. Okay, mostly to the rude parrot. You again, it squawked one morning. You gonna hiss or reflect today? Reflect, she muttered, coiling under a sun-warmed rock. Well, it's about time, Scales. In her solitude, she began watching. She saw how the wind helped shape the jagged stones over time, not by force, but persistence. She noticed a tiny flower blooming between two boulders, fed by a trickle of rainwater, fragile, but defiant. She watched mountain goats leap and stumble, and when one fell, the others helped it back up. She began to understand. Strength was not in venom. Power was not in fear. It was in connection. In choosing to heal instead of harm. In building instead of breaking. She thought of Obika. His kindness had not made him weak. It had made him brave. One night, beneath a full moon, Naoka curled around herself, eyes closed, and whispered into the wind. I want to be better. The wind didn't laugh this time. It whispered back, then began. When the season changed and the sun returned to its highest, Naoka made her way down the mountain. She was thinner. Quieter. And when she passed through the lowlands, the animals didn't scatter. A small child, plucking berries at the forest edge, saw her and didn't run. Naoka didn't speak. She simply bowed her head, and kept moving. A new dawn for the serpent. The day Naoka returned, the sky was dry, the earth cracked, and the air carried a silence that made even the birds second-guess their tweets. The village had changed in her absence, but not nearly as much as she had. She didn't slither in grandly, didn't raise her head high or speak in riddles like before. She came quietly, respectfully, like wind through tall grass. The villagers gathered slowly, eyes wide, voices hushed. There she was, the serpent who had once betrayed their trust. Now back. Older, leaner, and strangely calm. Mzee Bomoni stepped forward, gripping his staff like it might bite him first. "Nayoka," he said, "you return." "Why?" Nayoka bowed her head low, her voice softer than they remembered. "I came to prove that I am more than my past. That a serpent can change, not what she is, but what she chooses to be." The elders looked uncertain. The children peeked from behind baskets. A goat coughed judgmentally. Then, Obika stepped forward. The same old herbalist, but now with a knowing smile and new lines beneath his eyes. "If the council allows," he said, "I wish to offer Nayoka a final test." The elders murmured. "A test?" Mziel asked. "Of what kind?" Obika pointed toward the sun-scorched fields. "A drought has taken our crops. The rains have not come. But Nayoka carries knowledge older than our oldest drum. She once guarded the rivers. Let her try to call the rain." A silence swept through the crowd like a dropped drumstick at a funeral. "You would trust her with the skies?" Mzi Kofi asked. Obika nodded. "Yes. Because she no longer needs to be trusted. She needs to be believed in." That night, the village gathered on the hill. A circle of fire was lit. Drums were stilled. And Nayoka took the center. She coiled herself with grace, her eyes closed, her breath in rhythm with the wind. She began to hum, not a song, but a vibration, low and ancient. The villagers felt it in their chest. Then, she lifted her head to the sky and whispered words in a tongue forgotten by time, a language only the stars remembered. She danced, not with limbs, but with movement, weaving her body in sacred shapes, drawing symbols on the earth with her tail. Thunder rumbled. At first, they thought it was the drums. But no. The sky was answering. The clouds began to gather, not racing in, but rolling slowly, like they were listening, like they were remembering. A flash of light. A pause. Then, rain. First one drop. Then another. Then a sky full of it, drumming on rooftops, washing over the dry soil, laughing in puddles. The children squealed. The elders looked up, stunned. Even the skeptical goat nodded, clearly impressed. Nayoka did not gloat. She simply lowered her head again, letting the rain cleanse her scales and her soul. The next morning, the village came together. Not with fanfare or parades, but with acceptance. Mzi Bomoni declared it plainly. "Nayoka, you are no longer outsider, nor threat. You are protector, guardian, rainbringer. You have shown us that change, though slow, is possible even for those with fangs." Nayoka became something new, not a pet, not a goddess, but a watcher of balance. When children wandered too close to the forest, she gently guided them back. When wild animals crept toward the village, they found their path blocked by her silent gaze. She lived quietly in the hills nearby, close enough to be called upon, distant enough to give space. And every year, when the rains came, she would return and dance once more. Not for worship, not for praise, but as a thank you. To Obika, to the elders, to a village that chose to forgive. Final moral. Kindness is powerful, but gratitude gives it meaning.